Hey friends, welcome back to 3D Cartoon Review, where sealed caves open, ancient bands awaken, and quiet cultivators survive by thinking faster than danger. Today we step into the Immortal Ascension, episode 174, and the deeper we descend, the colder the air becomes. Until even courage starts to creak, so settle in, because one sealed hall will test every person present, and only a sharp mind can slip through an ancient prohibition alive. After the two Mulan cultivators finally withdrew, Han Li's group pushed deeper across the grassland, stopping before a bald stone mountain that looked lifeless. The cliff face was plain and stubborn, yet Nan Longhu's eyes showed certainty, as if he recognized a door where others saw only rock. Beside him, Bai Laoze raised a small flag, and the thin fabric fluttered like a warning ribbon tied to a blade. Nan Longhu and Bai Laoze lifted two tiny flags together, chanting in perfect rhythm, while talismans and spiritual light gathered around their hands. They flicked their wrists, and the flags shot forward, striking the cliff with crisp flashes that sank into stone like needles. The whole mountain shuddered violently, and the weaker cultivators swayed, their faces tightening as the ground groaned beneath their boots. A harsh cracking sound spread, and the mountain split into two gigantic slabs, parting slowly like jaws opening for a meal. Between the slabs, a stone staircase appeared, spiraling downward into darkness, as if the earth had opened its throat to swallow trespassers. No one laughed now, because every old tale says the richest treasure rooms begin with a descent that feels like a funeral. Every footstep echoed twice, once in the stone, once in their hearts, and nobody wanted to be the first to speak loudly. Some kept hands near talismans, others near hidden treasures, because in places like this, companions can become opponents in a blink. They entered with measured steps, and as they went deeper, the air turned yin-cold, making each breath feel heavy, and each thought strangely sluggish. The Yueguang stones along the passage should have shown pale, yet now they glowed ghostly green, staining faces with sick light. Without a word, everyone widened their spacing, because underground silence always invites betrayal, and trust becomes a luxury nobody can afford. The staircase finally spat them into a grand hall, so luxurious it felt unreal, with four walls translucent like jade, smooth as water and cold as glass. For a heartbeat, greed warmed the room, because such craftsmanship meant the owner once lived like a king beneath the world. Then the entrance behind them vanished, replaced by a wall of blue radiance that sealed the hall into a perfect, suffocating box. The blue barrier hummed like a living membrane, swallowing sound and turning the hall into a cage that answered only to ancient rules. Cold light ran across the translucent walls, and each reflection made everyone look slightly unfamiliar, like strangers sharing the same trap. Nan Longhu tried to steady the group, saying it was only an automatic defense, yet tension slipped into his voice as he named the ban aloud. Tai Miao Shen Jin, he said, and the word sounded like a chain dropping, because it was one of the 10 great ancient prohibitions. Even the confident ones exchanged careful glances, because once a team is trapped, alliances thin into ice that cracks with one wrong step. At that moment, Tai Furen stepped forward, chin raised, offering to use her own ban-breaking treasure in exchange for first choice of rewards. Her tone was smooth and confident, but everyone understood the price, because she was buying control over the vault with a priceless weapon. She raised her hand, and Lei Huo Chui appeared, a dual lightning and fire ancient treasure whose aura made the hall feel suddenly alive. Several cultivators pretended indifference, yet their eyes followed Lei Huo Chui, as if staring could claim ownership before the vault even opened. Nan Longhu's smile stayed polite, but his posture shifted subtly, because a broken treasure would change the power balance immediately. Tai Furen's plan was blunt and tempting, using overwhelming physical impact and violent elements to drill straight through the prohibition. She tested the wall once, and the hammer's glow sputtered, the result disappointing, yet her pride only hardened under watching eyes. With a tight jaw, she poured in full power, and Lei Huo Chui spun faster, becoming a red arc threaded with crackling lightning. The hammer slammed into the crystal wall, and for one breath it looked like success, because the surface rippled as if about to fracture. Then the ban revealed its true nature, the old rule of soft conquers hard, turning Tai Furen's strength into its own hunting line. Countless white threads erupted from the wall, wrapping the treasure like living silk, flexible yet merciless, drinking momentum without resistance. Those white strands tightened, squeezing inward, crushing metal from the inside, as if the wall had learned how to strangle without hands. A loud explosion shook the hall, and Lei Huo Chui shattered into fragments, its brilliant aura dying like a candle pinched out. Tai Furen's face turned paper white, and pain twisted her features, because a treasure tied to divine sense breaks the owner's spirit too. Tai Furen's fingers trembled, and she forced them still, because showing weakness here was like painting a target on her own back. Across the hall, tiny exhalations slipped out, the kind people release when danger chooses someone else, and guilt arrives a heartbeat later. Silence fell heavy and awkward, as if everyone had been reminded, in one brutal lesson, that ancient prohibitions never negotiate with arrogance. Wang Chan's mouth opened, then closed again, because even his sharpest sneer couldn't find a safe place to stand in that warning chill. Near him, Yan Ruyan's eyes flickered, and she noticed something sharper than fear, a mocking curve at Han Li's lips. Quick as a needle, Yan Ruyan did not speak, and she did not warn Wang Chan, yet a quiet plan began assembling inside her, piece by patient piece. Humiliation is rarely wasted in a treasure ground, and she stored that small insult the way vipers store warmth before striking. Tai Furen steadied her breathing, but resentment brewed behind her calm, because losing Lei Huo Chui was like losing a limb. No one else dared step forward, because the ban had proven it could destroy treasures and minds with the same casual cruelty. Only then did Han Li walk out calmly, voice low and steady, saying he wished to try once, if the fellow Taoists allowed. Some faces tightened with suspicion, because Han Li was always the quiet man who survived too often, and survival invites uncomfortable questions. He approached the jade-like wall without haste, and the hall felt tighter, as if the prohibition itself recognized a different kind of threat. Han Li did not call lightning, and he did not roar, because brute force was the language that had just been punished. Instead, he produced formation flags, each one different in color and spirit, and he arranged them with careful, unhurried precision. He studied the wall's glow the way a physician studies a pulse, searching for repeating patterns, pauses, and the hidden breathing of the ban. To him, the prohibition was not a monster, but a mechanism, and mechanisms always have seams. If you can keep your hands steady. He breathed out a stream of green essence onto the flags, feeding them like living tools, and their edges trembled as if waking. To the eye, the layout looked messy, almost random, yet his hands moved like a man following a map, only he could see. Then, Han Li gave a soft shout, and blinding white light erupted from his body, briefly swallowing the entire hall in glare. When the light faded, the group stared, because the flags had stabbed deep into the crystal surface and fused into the prohibition itself. Han Li did not celebrate, and he did not explain, because real skill speaks best when it refuses to perform for applause. He moved to the second wall and repeated the process, then the third, then the fourth, each cycle slow, controlled, and patient. Some wanted to ask his method, but pride sealed their lips, because admitting ignorance would make them feel smaller than the underground air. Yan Ruyan watched him longer than necessary, remembering that small smile, and wondering whether this quiet man mocked fate itself. Half an hour passed like a held breath, and during that time everyone watched, realizing Han Li wasn't fighting the ban at all. He was forcing the four walls to share one rhythm, stitching their separate defenses into a single pattern he could then interrupt. When the last set of flags settled, Han Li stepped to the center, holding a green formation plate that looked ordinary and deadly. His fingers struck hand seals in a steady cadence, like quiet thunder tapping on a closed door, until the latch gave up. Light from the four walls began to flicker, first chaotic, then gradually synchronized, as if four angry beasts were forced to march together. A booming sound erupted, strange and overwhelming, like 10,000 birds crying at once, and the blue radiance dissolved into nothing. The jade illusion vanished, revealing crude stone walls beneath, and the hall suddenly looked less like a palace and more like a carved tunnel. A massive stone gate appeared where none had been, ancient and heavy, its presence so abrupt that several cultivators stepped back. Wang Chan went speechless, and the others stared wide-eyed, because the impossible had been done quietly, without fanfare or sweat. Even Tai Furen's resentment paused, because success meant escape, and escape meant her chance to reclaim dignity inside the next chamber. Bai Laoze's gaze flicked between Han Li and the gate, already imagining which treasures could repay patience with a lifetime of dominance. Nan Longhu's face lit up, and he laughed, saying, "I never expected your formation skill to be this high, and you truly broke it." He added warmly, "Taoist Yun and I will keep our word. After we each choose one treasure, you may choose next without delay." Bai Laoze also smiled broadly, eyes burning hot with greed, because the gate meant the real vault had finally revealed its face. Beside them, Cultivator Yu grew impatient, urging Nan Longhu to inspect what lay ahead, fearing another hidden mechanism might wait. Nan Longhu said, "Relax, there won't be any more." Shang Kun Shangren's last words said, "This dwelling has only 2 layers of bands." That assurance loosened the last knot of fear, and one by one they followed behind Nan Longhu through the newly revealed doorway. Beyond the gate, the scene struck them into stillness, because a white-jade pavilion towered more than 10 jang, exquisite like sculpted moonlight. Above its entrance hung 3 silver characters that shone coldly, reading Yuqi Ge, as if the building had been labeled for visitors. In front of the pavilion stood a black altar, and atop it rested a silver scroll, rolled tight, quiet, and strangely solemn. The pavilion's white jade seemed to drink the green light behind them, and return it as a colder brilliance that made everyone's skin prickle. The black altar looked out of place, like a punctuation mark before a sentence, promising that the portrait was only the first warning. Bai Laoze approached carefully, and used a spell to open the scroll, and the silver silk unfurled like a curtain, revealing a final gaze. Inside was the portrait of Shang Kun Shangren, wearing a long sword and tilting his head upward, as if staring into heaven for an answer. They tested the scroll and sensed no immediate anomaly, yet the painted eyes felt watchful, like a warning that refused to speak. Han Li and the others decided to store the portrait first, because lingering in reverence wastes time, and time here is paid in blood. Their gaze returned to the white jade pavilion, because that was where true treasure should sleep, and where greed usually awakens into violence. Wang Chan glanced at Yan Ruyan and she smiled gently, yet her mind still held Han Li's earlier mockery like a hidden thorn. Nan Longhu cleared his throat as if to restore leadership, yet his eyes betrayed excitement, because the real treasure lay one step ahead. Han Li breathed evenly, refusing to hurry, because rushing in treasure grounds is how people donate their lives to other people's pockets. Tai Furen stood quiet, still shaken, and the phantom ache of her shattered treasure echoed in her divine sense with every heartbeat. Nan Longhu stepped forward as if he owned the path, but everyone knew ownership here lasts only until someone stronger decides otherwise. Han Li stayed slightly behind, calm at the edge, because he understood the real danger begins after the first door finally opens. The Jade Pavilion remained silent, immaculate, and almost mocking, as if it welcomed them politely while counting heartbeats like coins. No one spoke, but every person felt the same truth. Once Yuqi Ge opened, the team would stop being a team. And with that thought hanging in the cold air, they moved toward the pavilion, ready to test whether fortune favored skill or betrayal. If you enjoyed this descent through bands and patience, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because the next chapter opens the real treasure room. Because once Yuqi Ge's doors part, greed will speak louder, suspicion will sharpen, and Han Li must choose between profit and survival again. Thanks for watching 3D Cartoon Review, and I'll see you next time, where the quietest steps often lead to the deadliest rewards.